StudyJesus.com presents Bible Stories, where biblical stories of the ages come alive.
We continue with our series of Bible stories from the Old Testament with another true story found in Genesis chapter 25, verse 27 through chapter 27, verse 46, titled, How Jacob Stole His Brother's Blessing.
StudyJesus.com presents Bible Stories with your host, Dr. Joe Jackson. Stories directly from God's holy word, told in easy-to-understand story form that the whole family will enjoy, and featuring the work of a talented artist illustrating each week's story. Now gather the family because it's time for this week's Bible story.
After Abraham died, his son Isaac lived in the land of Canaan. Like his father, Isaac's home was a tent, and around him were the tents of his people and many flocks of sheep and herds of cattle feeding wherever they could find grass to eat and water to drink. Isaac and his wife Rebekah had two children. The older was named Esau, and the younger was named Jacob. Esau was a man of the woods and fond of hunting, and he was rough and covered with hair. Even as a boy, he was fond of hunting with his bow and arrow. Jacob, on the other hand, was quiet and thoughtful, staying at home and caring for the flocks of his father. Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob, but Rebekah liked Jacob. Among the people in those lands, when a man died, his older son received twice as much of what the father had owned as the younger. This was called his birthright because it was his right as the oldest son. So Esau, as the older of the two, had a birthright to more of Isaac's possessions than did Jacob. And besides this, there was the privilege of the promise of God that the family of Isaac would receive great blessings. Now Esau, when he grew up, didn't care for his birthright or the blessing which God had promised. But Jacob, who was a wise man, wished greatly to have the birthright which would come to Esau when his father died. Once when Esau came home hungry and tired from hunting in the fields, he saw that Jacob had a bowl of something that he had just cooked for dinner, and he said, "Give me some of that red stuff in the dish. Will you not give me some? I'm hungry." And Jacob answered, "I'll give it to you if you will first of all sell to me your birthright." And Esau said, "What's the use of the birthright to me now when I'm about to starve to death? You can have my birthright if you'll give me something to eat." And then Esau made Jacob a solemn promise to give to Jacob his birthright, all for a bowl of food. It wasn't right for Jacob to deal so selfishly with his brother, but it was very wrong in Esau to care so little for his birthright, and with it, God's blessing. Sometime after this, when Esau was 40 years old, he married two wives. Though this would be very wicked today, it wasn't wrong back then, for even good men then had more than one wife. Isaac and Rebekah were very sorry to have their son Esau marry these women, but still Isaac loved his active son Esau more than his quiet son Jacob. Isaac became very old and quite feeble, and so blind that he could scarcely see anything. And one day he said to Esau, "My son, I'm very old now, and I don't know how soon I must die. But before I die, I wish to give to you as my older son God's blessing upon you and upon your children, and upon your descendants. Go out into the fields now, and with your bow and arrows, shoot some animal that's good for food, and make me a dish of cooked meat, such as you know I like. And after I've eaten it, I'll give you the blessing. Esau should have told his father that the blessing didn't belong to him, because he'd sold it to his brother Jacob. But he didn't tell his father. He went out into the fields hunting to find the kind of meat that his father liked the most. Now, Rebekah was listening, and she heard all that Isaac had said to Esau. She knew that it would be better for Jacob to have the blessing than for Esau to have it. And also, she loved Jacob more than she did Esau. So she called to Jacob and told him what Isaac had said. And she said, "Now, my son, do what I tell you, and you'll get the blessing of your brother. Go out to the flocks and bring to me 2 young goats, and I'll cook them just like the meat which Esau cooks for your father. And you'll bring it to your father, and he'll think that you're Esau and will give you the blessing. And it really does belong to you." But Jacob said, "You know that Esau and I are not alike. His neck and arms are covered with hair, and mine are smooth. My father will feel of me, and he'll find that I'm not Esau, and then, instead of giving me a blessing, I'm afraid that he'll curse me." But Rebekah answered her son, "Never mind. You do as I've told you, and I'll take care of you. If any harm comes, it'll come to me. So do not be afraid, but go now and bring the meat." Then Jacob went and brought a pair of young goats from the flock, and from them his mother made a dish of food, so that it would be to the taste just as Isaac liked it. And then Rebekah found some of Esau's clothes, and she dressed Jacob in them, and she placed on his neck and his hands some of the skins of the little goats, so that his neck and his hands would feel rough and hairy to the touch. Then Jacob came into his father's tent, bringing the dinner and speaking as much like Esau as he could, and he said, "Here I am, my father." And Isaac said, "Who are you, my son?" And Jacob answered, "I'm Esau, your oldest son. I've done as you asked me. Sit up now and eat the dinner that I've made, and then give me your blessing as you promised me." And Isaac said, "How is it that you found it so quickly?" And Jacob answered, "Because the Lord your God showed me where to go and gave me good success." Isaac didn't feel certain that it was his son Esau. And he said, "Come nearer to me now, and let me feel you, so that I may know that you really are my son Esau." And Jacob went up close to Isaac's bed, and Isaac felt of his face and his neck and his hands. And then he said, "The voice sounds like Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Are you really my son Esau?" And Jacob again told a lie to his father, and he said, "I am." And then the old man ate the food that Jacob had brought to him, and he kissed Jacob, believing him to be Esau. And he gave him the blessing, saying to him this, "May God give you the dew of heaven, and the richness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. May nations bow down to you, and people become your servants. May you be the master over your brother, and may your family and descendants that shall come from you rule over his family and his descendants. Blessed be those that bless you, and cursed be those that curse you. Just as soon as Jacob had received the blessing, he rose up and hastened away. He'd scarcely gone out when Esau came in from his hunting with the dish of food that he'd cooked, and he said, "Let my father sit up now and eat the food that I've brought, and give me the blessing." And Isaac said, "Why, who are you?" And Esau answered, "I'm your son. I'm Esau, your oldest son." And Isaac trembled, and he said, "Well, who then is the one that came in and brought food to me? And I've eaten his food, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." And when Esau heard this, he knew that he'd been cheated. And he cried aloud with a bitter cry, "Oh, my father, my brother has taken away my blessing, just as he took away my birthright. But cannot you give me another blessing, too? Have you given everything to my brother?" And Isaac told him all that he had said to Jacob. He said, "I've told him that he shall be the ruler, and that all his brothers and their children will be under him. I've promised him the richest ground for his crops and rains from heaven to make them grow. All these things have been spoken, and they must come to pass. What is left for me to promise you, my son?" But Esau begged for another blessing, and Isaac said, "My son, your dwelling shall be of the riches of the earth and of the dew of heaven. You shall live by your sword, and your descendants shall serve his descendants. But in time they shall break loose and shake off the yoke of your brother's rule, and shall be free."
Precious memories, unseen angels, sent from somewhere to my soul.